Last month, I released a video about using storytelling to improve your kit bashing skills, and I thought it was going to be a flop.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Anyway, within the comments, you guys had a lot to say about your own personal projects, ranging from an impossibly huge Imperial Guard army where every model is unique, to a wolf lord whose favourite puppy has become some kind of weird servo skull. Now, while I was glorifying in these reports of creative bursts of insanity, I came across a comment about Primaris and Firstborn miniatures, which quickly became a short but very interesting discussion. So after being delivered this interesting little side quest, I decided I had to really see if it's possible to repose one of these monoposed miniatures. This is Cursed Crusader Arts. So here's the plan. I want to add a new member to my growing ranks of heretical fallen angels, but this one's going to be based off a Blade Guard veteran. This big boy runs around all day with a sword and a shield and occasionally reminds people that he also has a big gun. But the miniature is designed in a way that doesn't really give much room to modify it. Unfortunately, the soon-to-be Chaos Marine has forgotten that although I may be a filthy heretic, my brain has the functionality of a mildly competent orc. So here's the rules. Number 1. The core parts must come from the same Blade Guard veteran. Number 2. The miniature cannot have more than 3 parts from other miniatures. This includes 3D printed pieces, and this is also before decorating him as a heretic. And rule number 3, the miniature must be significantly reposed. So I'm going to give it my best shot, and then you can decide for yourself just how much Primaris models can actually limit you. To start this project, I want to get a feel for how the model looks originally, and I suggest you do the same with your projects too, especially if you've not built it before. Blue tack is our best friend, so I'm going to dry fit this Blade Guard veteran just so that we can see how the pieces are supposed to connect to one another, and then I can get an idea of what I want to do with it. This particular model is holding the hilt of his sword inside the scabbard and would either be pointing or shooting some kind of weapon with a strong stance. The first thing I notice is that all 3 of these Blade Guard veterans pretty much use the same stance regardless of what the rest of their body is doing. So this is one thing that I want to change. And to help me get an idea of what I want to do, I'm going to build a narrative in my head. So this fallen angel has been in a duel and he's been injured. He's been forced to his knees and he's holding his wound, and yet he's still quite defiant, trying to get back onto his feet so that he can fight again. The bulk of our conversion will be focused on the legs. Dropping him to his knees will be quite the challenge, given the number of details included on the sculpt.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
To begin working on the legs, we must first cut them off of the main body. And luckily, this has been split in half. The front section of the torso has the knee pads barely hanging onto the tabard, which makes them easy to remove, and we can then place them back onto the model later on without too much trouble. Meanwhile, the back part of the body has the main parts of the legs, and these need to be cut away carefully both at the knees and the hips, being careful not to damage the additional details too much. I also want to retain as much of the original armor pieces as possible, so I try to keep all of the cuts in the ribbed sections between the joints, and later on we can replace this with green stuff and milliput. Now once these legs are removed, we have something more akin to the 2007 era of miniatures where our models are composed of a separate torso, legs, head and arms. To make our model kneel, we need to remove the hanging section of the tabard. We can make a new one later, so just add the removed section to your bits box for another project. From here on out, it's a simple case of trimming and dry fitting over and over until we can comfortably make the angle that we're looking for. Using blue tack is invaluable for this phase of the project, allowing you to manipulate the pieces without having to commit. But there are 2 important tricks to making this work. First, cut the model at the joints. Removing the ribbed section from the armour that's found behind the knee and elbows is a great way to get a natural bending point. Refine this by sanding the part down to fit the curved space, and now you can bend the leg or arm however you want, and you can fill the area back in with some green stuff later. Secondly, you must be bold about how much you remove. In some cases, you may only need to trim off a small amount of the model, but in this instance, I had to remove most of the upper left leg in order to get the pose right. This is because our Space Marine is leaning over his leg, and logically the torso would conceal most of the upper leg. This can be quite risky, but I can assure you roughly 70 to 80% of the upper leg was cut away in order for me to make this pose work. If for any reason that you're unsure about trying this out, give it a go on one of your rank and file models. This sacrificial piece is going to give you the practice and confidence that you need so that you can try this on much more interesting and valuable models later on down the line. Moving on to the arms, I want to start with the left side. I start by cutting the tab off of the blade guard's arm, giving me a flat surface for the new hand. And then I use some sprue glue to create a bond between the parts which will allow me to angle the hand inwards. But be sure to let this dry and cure fully before making further modifications, or your parts are just gonna fall off. The hand fits perfectly and it's quite believable, but the shoulder is now out of place. We can remove, rotate and reattach the shoulder into the correct angle and fill in the remaining gap. And once all of this is put together, we have completed 3 of the 4 limbs and our piece is beginning to look great. Next, I'm going to pick the head. I could use a helmet, but I want to show just how much pain this fallen angel is in. This head has a brilliant grimace, and the scars on the cheek are going to help tell a story of someone who is constantly getting injured in a cruel, sadistic and unforgiving galaxy. Now, I'm not particularly a fan of the flat top haircut, plus my strain of Fallen a Chaos Heretic, so he's going to go through his midlife crisis a little early, so I'll simply file off his hair and make him bald. Using a pin, I can freely rotate and tilt the head to show different expressions. Lowering his head towards the hand on his stomach will indicate him focusing on the wound. Tilting his head up may suggest that he's glaring and snarling at the enemy who just injured him, but I will be angling his head slightly down and towards the sword, suggesting that he's fighting the pain to get back to his feet once more. To sell this story, we need to find the correct arm. This isn't too difficult, using one from the Blade Guard veterans that we would normally add a sword as shield. The challenge comes from the hands. Many of the hands are tilted up at the wrist when using swords, or half the hand is hidden behind the shields. Furthermore, we will need to flip a sword upside down, which can leave us relying on relatively weak connection points. To overcome this, I'm going to use the spare chainsword from my Captain in Gravis armor that was previously turned into the Plague Hunter. I don't need the chainsword or arm, only the hand and the handle. The fingers are connected to the chainsword handguard, and when I remove it, we lose the front part of the fingers, so I'll need to resculpt these later. After separating the sword blade, the hand and the chainsaw hilt, it's time to drill our holes for the pin that will hold it together. There is no room for error, so the trick here is to take it slow and make sure the drill bit is as straight as you can get it. Once glued together, we have our sword held in a reverse grip. Now, just as a little side note, be sure to cut off the end of the sword blade, somewhere around halfway up, so you can sell the image of the sword being driven into the ground. This will ensure that your model is flush to the ground and not leaning in the wrong direction. Finish off by setting the arm in place, add the pauldron, tilt shield and power pack, and you're all done. Our model is fully converted and ready to be painted, so let's just check back on our rules. Are all of the core components of the model still from the same Blade Guard veteran we started with? Did we use more than 3 parts from any other kits? Are there any 3D printed parts? Is the pose significantly different from what we started with? Hopefully this will have given you some ideas on how you can make massive alterations to your miniatures, even if it seems that the current kits are restrictive. In reality, the only limitations are the ones that you create in your head. So how far are you willing to go? What is it that you're willing to do to your models, and how much time are you willing to spend on them? Because in truth, the models have never been better, and you now have access to potentially unlimited poses. Granted, not everybody will want to do this with the rank and file soldiers of their army, but I urge you to give it a shot for your elite units and leaders, making them stand out as phenomenal centerpieces of your army. But whatever you do, make things have fun. Oh, did you think I'd forgotten? Small additional changes will make this model a Chaos Marine. As usual, I'll be extending the arms of the power pack, this time using tubes made with green stuff and reinforced with a paperclip. Then, the vents will be given that extra chaotic touch by adding some Tyranid spikes onto each one. A trophy spike is going to restore some of the height lost by making the Space Marine kneel. I wrap a small length of wire around it just to remove some of the tidy and ordered look. To help sell the pose, I add another Dark Angel's reliquary to the trophy rack, and a skull to the left pauldron. I take particular care to angle these in the same direction, as the model is leaning to show the pull of gravity. The right pauldron simply has short lengths of wire embedded into it. Perhaps this Space Marine will add more skulls as he continues to wage his war against the Corpse Emperor. Now it's time to prime the model for painting. I'm purposely leaving the cape off until the painting is finished, so that it can be moulded to fit the shape of the new base. But for now, here is a completely reposed Blade Guard veteran converted into a Chaos Fallen Angel. This was a tough project. It made me really use the skills I had and forced me to experiment and try out new skills. There were also many times I thought the model would be completely ruined, but I think it turned out pretty great. I understand that many of us can end up feeling like the miniatures we have today streamline us into building cardboard cutouts of the same units. But I can promise you that if you take a little bit of time and use some imagination, you can create some really unique and compelling models for your army or for the display shelf. But whatever you do, make things, have fun, and I'll see you next time on Cursed Crusader Arts.